I never imagined I'd be here, but once it started, I couldn't turn back. The words felt foreign on my lips, almost like they belonged to someone else. But deep inside, I knew they were true. The past few days had been a blur of confusion and disbelief, a slow unraveling of everything I thought I knew. And as I stand here now, on the edge of a truth I never wanted to face, I realize there's no going back. How did I end up here? I never saw it coming. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind of quiet, uneventful night that I always took for granted. The air outside was crisp, the last traces of sunlight slipping away as the streetlights flickered on by one. I was sitting in the living room, the familiar hum of the refrigerator in the background, a subtle noise that I'd long since tuned out. The soft click of the clock on the wall marked the passing seconds, each one feeling heavier than the last. I leaned back on the couch, eyes fixed on the TV screen, but my mind wasn't there. It never really was these days. The house felt too big, too empty somehow, even with my wife, Emily, just in the other room, busy preparing dinner. I glanced at the clock again, 7:15 p.m. She should have been done by now. But Emily always took her time, moving from one task to the next with a kind of absent-minded grace. I told myself I was being paranoid, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. It was in the way she'd been acting lately, the way her attention seemed to drift when I spoke to her, like her mind was elsewhere. I could hear the clatter of pots and pans from the kitchen, but I stayed still. A knot formed in my stomach, a tightening that I couldn't ignore. The house felt too quiet, too still, almost as if the walls were holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. Then I heard it, her phone buzzing from the kitchen counter. It wasn't unusual. She'd been getting a lot of messages recently, mostly from friends, sometimes from her sister. But tonight, there was something different. Something about the tone of the buzz, the way it lingered in the silence. I told myself it was nothing, that I was imagining things, but a strange, cold feeling crawled up my spine. And that's when I knew something was about to change. I tried to focus on the TV, but my mind kept wandering back to the kitchen. The buzzing stopped, but my eyes kept darting over to the counter, where her phone sat, silently glowing in the dim light. It was almost as if it were calling to me, its presence becoming impossible to ignore. I shifted uncomfortably on the couch, my fingers tapping against the armrest. I had no reason to feel this way. Emily and I had been married for over 5 years, and we were happy, or at least I thought we were. But lately, there had been a shift, a distance between us that I couldn't explain. It was in the way she avoided my gaze, how her responses became shorter, more detached. A soft thud echoed from the kitchen. I looked up, my heart skipping a beat. Emily had dropped something. Her footsteps followed, quick and light, as she made her way into the living room. "Sorry, I didn't mean to startle you," she said, offering me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I forced a smile back, though it felt strange on my face, like a mask. "Don't worry about it," I replied, but my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. She was acting different. I could feel it. The tension in her posture, the way she kept glancing at her phone every few seconds, the way her lips pressed together in that tight, nervous way when she thought I wasn't paying attention. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. I glanced over at the counter again. The phone was still sitting there, untouched. "Who was that?" I asked, my voice coming out sharper than I intended. It sounded more accusatory than curious, but I couldn't help it. The question hung in the air between us, thick and heavy. Emily paused for a moment, her eyes flickering toward the phone before she quickly looked away. "Just work," she muttered, almost too quickly, and turned toward the kitchen again. But something in her tone didn't sit right with me. The way she'd hesitated before answering. The way she'd avoided looking at me for too long. I stayed quiet, letting the silence stretch between us. My mind raced with questions, each one more troubling than the last. I wanted to ask more, to demand the truth, but I didn't. "Not yet." As she walked back to the kitchen, I noticed something else, a small silver ring on her finger, one that wasn't there before. It had a delicate design, something I would have remembered. My breath caught in my throat as I realized she hadn't been wearing it the night before. I didn't know what it meant, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was happening, something I wasn't supposed to know. And in that moment, I knew one thing for sure. Everything was about to change. The minutes dragged on, each one heavier than the last. I could hear the clinking of silverware from the kitchen, the soft sound of Emily humming under her breath. But all I could focus on was the weight of that ring, the one she wasn't wearing yesterday. And the phone that had buzzed earlier and remained untouched. I stood up from the couch, the urge to do something, anything growing too strong to ignore. I wanted to walk into the kitchen, to ask her what was going on, to demand answers. But a voice in the back of my mind stopped me. I knew better. I couldn't ask her just yet. Not without proof. If I confronted her now, it would be nothing more than an accusation, a vague suspicion. And I wasn't sure if I was ready for what that might mean. I glanced back at the phone again, my stomach tightening. What was I hoping for? Some sign? A message that would confirm my fears? Or was I just looking for an excuse, a reason to avoid the terrifying truth that kept creeping into my mind? I took a deep breath, forcing my thoughts to settle, but the doubt wouldn't go away. It never did. It was like a constant hum in my ears, growing louder with every passing second. What if she was cheating? I felt the sharp sting of betrayal even at the thought. But then, another part of me, a darker part, felt something else. What if she wasn't? What if I was just imagining things? The internal battle twisted inside me, each possibility more agonizing than the last. If I was wrong, if I confronted her without cause, I would lose everything. But if I was right, what would I do then? I rubbed my forehead, trying to shake off the tension that had settled in my chest. I wasn't sure which thought terrified me more, the possibility that Emily was hiding something, or the possibility that I was becoming someone I didn't recognize. A man suspicious of his own wife, a man driven by paranoia. I wanted to trust her. I had to. But why did it feel like everything had changed? I could hear the faint rustling from the kitchen again. Her voice, soft and distant, called out to me, but I didn't respond immediately. I wasn't ready to face her yet, not with all this uncertainty swirling in my mind. I wanted to turn back, to let it go, to forget about the phone and the ring and the strange tension between us. But I couldn't. I could still feel the pull, the undeniable sense that something was off. I tried to push it away, but it only grew stronger. The knot in my stomach tightened again, and my hands began to shake. This wasn't just about a ring or a phone anymore. It was about trust, about whether the life I thought I was living was a lie. And that was a question I didn't think I could ignore. I couldn't breathe. The air felt thick, like it was pressing down on me from all sides. I stood there in the hallway, staring at the door to the bedroom, my heart hammering in my chest. Every part of me was screaming to go inside, to confront her. The phone, the ring, the whispers that wouldn't leave me. My hand hovered over the door handle, trembling. What if I was wrong? What if I was about to destroy everything over a stupid hunch? But another part of me, the part that had been growing stronger with each passing hour, whispered, what if you're right? What if you're just the last to know? The thought felt like a punch to my gut. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breath, but it felt impossible. My mind was a war zone, and I was losing the battle. I wanted to turn around, to walk away, to pretend I hadn't seen the signs. To trust her, even if that trust felt fragile now. But then I imagined her with him, with our neighbor. My fists clenched. My nails dug into my palm, but it didn't stop the shaking. I had to know the truth. I couldn't live like this anymore, caught between the whispers of doubt and the fear of what I might find. I could hear her footsteps in the kitchen, light and quick. She was busy with something. Did she know? Did she feel it too? I wanted to call out to her, to ask her what was going on, but the words caught in my throat. It wasn't that simple. Not anymore. Then, just as I was about to push open the door, I heard something. The faintest sound. A voice, low and muffled, but unmistakable. I froze. My pulse shot through the roof. It was him. I'd known. I knew it. But hearing him, hearing his voice in my own home, was the final blow. It shattered everything I thought I knew. I wasn't imagining it. It wasn't some paranoid fantasy. She was really with him. I stepped back, my mind racing, my world spinning. I could feel my body betraying me, my legs weak, my breath ragged, as I tried to piece everything together. What was I supposed to do now? I wanted to burst in there. I wanted to scream, to confront them both, to make her feel the weight of her betrayal. But something held me back. A part of me still wanted to give her the chance to explain, to hear her side. But could I ever trust her again? Could I forgive her for this? And then, the voice in my head, the one I'd been trying to drown out, spoke up again. You deserve to know. You deserve more than this. I took a step forward, my hand trembling as I reached for the door handle again. But as my fingers brushed against the cold metal, something stopped me. Was I ready to hear the truth? Was I ready to face it? For a moment, everything stood still. My heart beat in my ears, louder than the world around me. And then, with a trembling breath, I twisted the handle and opened the door. I stepped into the room, my heart pounding in my ears. The air felt heavy, suffocating, as if the very walls knew what was about to happen. She turned, her eyes wide, and I saw it, the shock, the guilt, the panic. It was all there, written across her face. But in that moment, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. She opened her mouth, but the words caught in her throat. What was she going to say? How could she explain this? My eyes flicked to the bed. The sheets were crumpled, the way they never were after a night spent alone. I could feel the anger building in my chest, but I swallowed it down. I wasn't ready to explode yet. I needed answers first. For a long moment, we just stood there. The silence between us felt like a chasm, wide and deep. My mind raced, trying to process the reality of the situation. Was this really happening? She finally spoke, her voice shaky, her hands trembling. I never meant for this to happen. But the words didn't bring any comfort. They felt hollow, like an excuse, something to soften the blow of what had already been done. I wanted to scream at her, to make her understand how much this hurt. But I didn't. I couldn't. Something in me just froze. I wasn't sure if it was the shock or the part of me still hoping for some explanation that would make sense of it all. But all I could do was stare at her, trying to make sense of what had happened to everything we'd built. I'm sorry, she said again, but this time it didn't matter. The apology felt empty. I turned to leave, but something inside me screamed to stay. I wanted to know more everything. But the thought of hearing it, of confronting it, made me feel sick to my stomach. What was I even supposed to say? I stood there for a moment, caught between walking away and getting the answers I didn't want to hear. And just as I reached the door, I heard a noise, a knock on the window. I froze. My blood ran cold as I turned slowly, dread crawling up my spine. The blinds were half open, and standing there, just outside, was him, the neighbor. His face was twisted in a look I couldn't quite place. Was it guilt? Defiance? Or maybe something worse? I didn't know what to do. My feet felt like they were stuck to the floor. Should I open the door? Should I confront him too? I knew that whatever happened next would change everything forever. I swallowed hard and took a step toward the window. But as my hand reached for the blinds, I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. It was a message from her. I never meant for this to happen. But I need you to know it's not over yet. The words hung in the air, heavy and cryptic. And as I stared at my phone, everything in me screamed to understand what she meant by that. But deep down, I already knew. Nothing would ever be the same again.